So, hi everybody. My name is Jasmin Blasco. Let me have a drink before I do this. The work you see exhibited here is called The First Human Born in Space. And one of the motivations behind this series of short films was to create a narrative that made possible an external point of view on Earth as a totality. And also, more than that, to even look at the context of space as not, either infinite, but something that is these days prone to private enterprise as well as the claims of scientific exploration. So, to put it into context with something that happened recently, of course, David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust is kind of necessarily a precedent to this project, although it's not something that I've really put consciously in there, but the idea of creating a complete outsider was very much the sort of first inspiration of the project. So in terms of the basic technique that's leveraged in the project, I was really interested in using commonly available footage, mostly from YouTube and from the space agencies, the footage that's produced on the International Space Station in particular, or the footage that's produced in certain simulations of space on Earth and vice versa. And I overlay this footage with a fictional monologue. So what you see essentially are diary entries. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up is my project is described in the cartel as, connecting or disconnecting the documentary aspect and science fiction. And I want to I want to re-examine what's meant by science fiction. So typically we've seen science fiction as something where we take very bold imaginative leaps from a kind of excitement about the possibilities of technology. And this is very kind of middle of the 20th century, I feel. And so the reason I'm bringing this up is I think the topic of sustainability puts us in a different relationship to time. And for example, yesterday, Çelenk, you were talking about the Anthropocene. So the idea that, broadly speaking, as mankind has had a geological impact on the Earth. And so this is a fantastically impactful idea. We can discuss the Earth and human race in its totality with this notion. However, I was very aware of this notion as I made the project, but what I thought was interesting is, in fact, to look at contemporary examples of the future. I think the relationship we have with technology today has a much shorter feedback loop. So right now this might be very Californian, but we have sort of considerations about the self-driving car, or can we have a hoverboard if we were children of the 80s, and things like that. I think it's interesting to notice that all these things are actually really coming to the foreground in a contemporary way, and so that the relationship we have with technology in terms of wish fulfillment is much more rapid, essentially. So hence the necessity to kind of compound a documentary approach with a fictional approach. And so, I see there's a few other things I wanted to say. The other thing I wanted to say is also, the project wants to be able to navigate this idea of vastness and totality, but really kind of bring it home in a first-person narrative. And this is where there's two things that I want to bring Paolo Colombo in two ways here. I think on one hand, this idea of the hedgehog as the animal that defends itself completely with an armor. This is weirdly very much what the project wants to investigate critically. There's a relationship to nature, to the outside, where nature is already completely inhospitable to man in my kind of narrative context. So we have somebody who's on the International Space Station, he's floating in a piece of metal in space, and it's a survival armor, and that's all it is. And we look at Earth from space in the context of the story as something that is soon to be completely inhospitable, and we look at Mars as something that is not yet hospitable. So it's a way to kind of radicalize some kind of thinking about our relationship with catastrophe in nature, and also examine how certain catastrophic fictions are implicit in certain kind of entrepreneurial projects. So very simply, for example, if you're familiar with Elon Musk's SpaceX, it's a company that tries to make more efficient rockets. But really, their mission statement is, let's go colonize Mars. So it's just a replication of an old Californian dream in a certain sense. So there's that first sense about how those big ideas play on a personal level. And then just to finish, I wanted to say in the last episode, I really I was discussing this with the copy editor here. I really tried to write a song, basically. And since nobody was going to look at it as a song, because it's just a couple of lines, in a movie, I want to say it's always a joy to hear about, Paolo's relationship to music and how he might use song titles to curate something. So it's I don't know, just to wrap it up, that's something that I was very fond of being a part of as well, to find that resonance. Thank you.